1, 2, 3. Hi everybody. So, the news around the world in the liberal Western European sphere, there's something greatly wrong with our political systems and our bureaucratic systems in particular. I've just read articles from Australia where they gave people bail and they're charged with attacking people with machetes. Now, I'm not saying that people of the Australian culture have not picked up knives or machetes and thrown them around and tried to stab people, either in the present or the past. I'm sure it has happened. I mean, I remember, like, I know things like Martin Bryant in 1996, wasn't it, when he, shot those people in Port Arthur. Yes, I know about all these things. I know that there have been Australians, people of the Australian culture. Now, what does that mean? It means people who were born into the Australian culture, and the word would be educated and indoctrinated into it. Now, in the last probably 30 years, I think there's been some extreme radical changes where we've moved away what would have been called the Australian culture that existed in the 1980s, 1970s, 60s, 50s. Don't tell me about racism. Shut up. Don't even bother telling me about the Aboriginals. Because when I grew up in the 80s, I went to school with Aboriginals and Indigenous Australians. We used to just call them Aboriginals. There wasn't the racial division that there is now. I think because it's been fostered and promoted by the radical left-wing lunatics. There's always been problems with the Indigenous population, such as a lower age, life expectancy, health issues, education issues. They've always existed, and I've got no problem with some of the government taking some taxpayer money to improve those people's lives. I am not saying we should remove that and it should be for white people only, or none of that bullshit. Get off that bullshit. But we definitely have an Australian culture, and it may not be the Indigenous Aboriginal culture per se, but that is part of also the Australian culture. But it's be good to your mates, stick up for your mates, do the right thing, be fair. If you're doing really well, don't scream about it and tell other people they're useless and terrible. Help your fellow Australian. But just recently, I've seen none of this shit, none of this stuff. The greatness of what it meant to be an Australian. What I've seen is radical left-wing lunatic politicians, and fuck them both. Labor and Liberal, they're the same shit in the same toilet. Okay? They're just laid by two different people, but they're really just the same shit. Because I haven't heard, who's that dickhead in the Liberal Party? Peter Dutton say, no immigration. No, I haven't heard that. Labor say, we're going to build 7,000 more homes. I'm Anthony Albanese. Well, he doesn't give a fuck about Australians. He cares about the immigrants because they vote Labor normally. More government benefits. At the same time, increase Australian debt, force Australians out. Sometimes it's not about national GDP, national gross domestic product. Sometimes it's about the fucking people that live in the country. Okay? I have a friend of mine who's married 2 kids. Oh, by the way, he's Indian, just to let you know. His heritage, his genetics are Indian, okay? His ancestry is Indian, but he's Australian, 100%. You know, he was telling me, man, it's just so tough. Me and my wife working full time, 2 kids. We are struggling. We will never be able to buy a home. But yet, the degenerate parasites in Canberra don't slow down immigration so that maybe the employees of Australia can fare a little bit better in the marketplace. No, they don't bother with that. They just want they want more tax revenue, more of a tax base. Because let me explain. Government is a money laundering operation. It takes your money, it takes all the money of the people and gives back less. And that money is caught up in the bureaucracy, bad contracts, bad deals. Some of it goes to good projects and purposes. But it's used to keep the radical left-wing lunatics in power. Because just think about it. Think about the perfect job. You can pay yourself $250,000 a year and give yourself a 10% raise every year, no matter how bad or good you do. Inflation is about 3%, but hey, we can give ourselves a 7% raise. And nobody chin checks the politicians. It's fantastic. It's so good I should do it, right? But I couldn't because I'm not a politician. But what I've noticed is that the politicians don't care about Australians. And this is evident in the people who we see on the news reports attacking people with machetes. Grooming gangs in the UK. I'm sure there are grooming gangs in Australia. Of course there are in the US. I've just heard of sex trafficking rings being broken up by immigration and customs enforcement in the US. But the radical left-wing lunatics were there to protest and they actually broke in and released people from these immigration detention centers. That's how fucking crazy people are. In New York, they just voted in a radical left-wing Islamist. And you can't be a radical left-wing lunatic and an Islamist. It makes no sense. Which one's he going to choose? We know which one he's going to defer to. But also, you've got to understand through the process of Islamic taqiyya, deception is that they destroy from the inside. And there's one of the ministers of the United Arab Emirates, I think Foreign Affairs Minister, said the liberal West don't understand terrorism. It's going to come from within because you allow it to come in and you foster it and you allow it to grow and fester. And it takes the minds of the weak. Okay? I can remember sitting 24 years ago now in a mosque in Australia at the back and listening to an imam say one day we will take over Australia and everyone will be Muslim. Okay, and just if you have a look at their countries, they're just shitholes. That's what's going to happen, and it already is. There are streets in Australia you can't walk down now. There are whole suburbs in England you can't walk down. You know, in America, some of the hoods used to be bad, like Compton and, South Central Los Angeles and, some areas of Queens and Brooklyn used to be bad, but now there's a lot more. And we can't, even in Texas, you just can't walk down. Because the people who there will never respect the native culture. of the land. They are there to change it because they will never accept it. And it doesn't stop. The extremism doesn't stop. It keeps coming. And just getting back to it, people are getting bailed out. Or they're not even... Sometimes the charges are being dropped in Australia when it's a group of people who are not of the Australian culture or ethos are just ransacking stores. Why are they doing this is the question that is so obvious. What's happening in the US with all of their ICE, protests. They're not protests, they're riots. In Australia, we had Black Lives Matter. What the bloody hell does that mean in Australia? Because what? Because in America, 8 unarmed black people a year are killed by police. What? 8? Is it 10? Is it 10? Something like that. We should just have, protests in the street. Australia doesn't riot like the US. I think because we don't really have the Democratic Party in Australia. We do have Labor Party, but they're sort of not exactly pro-violence. Whereas the Democratic Party in the US, it fosters it in a very seditious and treasonous way. And then they claim, I never said anything. And then you listen to them, 6 months ago, they made a speech saying, I don't know why people aren't rioting in the streets, But the reason that our politicians want to do this is they know they're liars. They're con artists. Because eventually when we want to claim what is ours, it won't be there. They've spent it, they've money laundered it. It's no longer there. They're going to need foot soldiers who hate us, the workers, the intellectual capacity of the nation, the intelligent people, the able-bodied people. They're going to need their armies to be able to suppress us, to oppress us. They're playing a big game, a dangerous game. Because you don't know if these people will support them or not. If some of these radical left-wing lunatics think that Islamists are going to support them, you've got another thing coming. I've just seen videos of gay men who now are, what is it called, transgender into being gay girl, what do you call it, trans woman? But they're not doing it like this. They're saying they're 10-year-old trans girls and they're converting to Islam. I have not seen one. I have seen about 24 videos in the last 3 hours of going through Twitter. And I'm like, excuse me? Are you sure it's Islam you want to do? Because I'm not sure they're going to be all that happy. Now, Jesus Christ is the one that said, love thy neighbor. No matter how crazy they are. Hate the sin, love the sinner, Are you sure it's not Jesus Christ you're looking for? Because I don't think Allah's going to do it for you. That is the degeneracy that the radical left-wing lunatics who want complete authoritarian power over us want. They want those people, those completely batshit insane crazy people, to be on their side. I don't know if it's going to happen. Do you think a crazy, insane, batshit crazy person can hold themselves together for a very long time? What happens, radical left-wing lunatics? Radical left-wing lunatic politicians, I should say. What happens when you realize that mentally ill people make very poor foot soldiers? Who's going to support you then? I don't know. I think, look, I have some questions. What about, so the United States has President Donald Trump. I think he's one of the very few leaders in the world. There's only a handful of them. I've seen them in Hungary and Poland and not too many other nations who are saying, America first, we can't have people here illegally, got to do it the right way. We have to protect our culture, we have to be proud of who we are. But do we have that in England? No, not Keir Stern or whatever his stupid name is. He looks, whenever he's confronted with a random question, have you ever looked at him? He's like, I have to know what my paymaster tells me to think. He has no idea. And he, 20 years ago, used to defend the radicals in court because he was a lawyer. In Australia, we just voted in a piece of shit. Labor are pieces of shit, but the Liberals are only better. I used to be a big time Liberal. I used to think they were good, but now I realise they're pieces of shit too. The UK needs to vote Nigel Farage for Prime Minister and has to really have a lot of those kind of people who are England first, English culture first. See, because right now I couldn't understand this. Right now, the radical left-wing government of the UK, of Great Britain, would you pick a Somalian refugee or an educated Australian to enter your country? Well, I think the radical left-wing lunatics would pick the Somalian refugee, who would have a completely different culture, different religion, different life experiences than the Australian, even though we are probably one of the closest cultures to that of British culture. And this is obvious when you look at how Australia loves English comedy. We used to watch The Goodies when we were kids. Fawlty Towers, The Black Adder. These do get some play in the United States, but in Australia, they're staples of our comedy relief, right? But we need people like Nigel Farage. In Australia, we already have her. She's called Pauline Hanson. Now, I don't necessarily have to agree with everything Pauline says, but she's Australia first and Australians first. And yes, that includes Indigenous Australians. She has always said that. They should come first before any refugees or migrants. Because we just don't bloody need them. We need Australia for Australians. Britain needs Britain for the English people. The United States needs the United States for American people. But I'll be honest with you. I think that we can live in each other's countries and respect the rules, laws, and the culture. The United States is a little bit different to Britain and Australia, and like in New Zealand, or maybe an Australian living in Ireland or Scotland. We can fit in Wales. We can fit in very, very well. And a Welshman can move to Australia, an Irishman can work in Australia and fit in really well. But what about a Somalian boat pirate who just jumped on a boat, threw his identification in the water on the way? Gets a free phone, of course, from the radical left-wing bleeding heart liberals when he arrives on the beach. Free accommodation, a free car, £4,000 a month, probably. But wouldn't that be too... The difference... we couldn't reconcile the differences. And we're noticing this because there are parts of Australia Australians can't walk down anymore. My mate told me there are parts of his suburb he knows he can't go down in between Gold Coast and Brisbane in Australia. And he's brown. He's black. He's almost dark brown. He said, I can't. You know, got to be careful. Why is he like that? And we're letting these people back out with machetes. Do you think somebody that attacks someone with a machete and you give them a good behaviour bond, they're not going to go find another machete? Of course they are. Ban machetes? Okay, I'm sure they can. They're gonna always get them. You know. You know. We need to vote in people who actually respect the country instead of the seditious and treasonous traitors that are in politics now, because these people don't care. They love the money laundering. They love the notoriety of being a big name politician. And they want complete authoritarian control. That's why they allow these third world parasitic degenerates into our nations, because they're going to cause the crisis required for authoritarian action. And then it's all over for us, and we're allowing it to happen because we keep voting in the same fucking shits. You know, sometimes you've got to flush the toilet. No, Australians seem to just keep shitting in the same toilet. Oh, we're just going to pick a different shit this time. It looks the same, smells the same. Let's just pick that one again. Britain, if they vote in Labour again, oh, for fuck's sake. I mean, the Conservatives aren't any better there now. You know, the Tories suck as well. And, you know, voting in this radical communist bloody Muslim in New York. I mean, fucking Democrats, man. Oh, Democrats have failed us every single time. Time to try a new Democrat. Fucking hell. You have to go with MAGA people. Go vote for the MAGA party. Go find the MAGA candidate. I am fearful of the beautiful liberal democratic West. I don't give a shit about anywhere else. I really just don't. I don't care. Do what you want, Japan. I don't care. Go do it. I've lived there for a long time, you know. Speak Japanese. I'm okay. But you, Japan, you do Japan. South Korea, the same. Russia, the same. And I don't care about Russia, you know. Uganda. You should do for Ugandans. You know. Zambia. You should do for Zambians. You know. That's what I think. But why is it that these politicians want to drag these people in, let them cause crises? Because they don't represent us anymore. They don't care. They know they can't win us back, so they need to import new voters. They're going to cause a big crisis and then bring on authoritarian controls. Do you want that? You better stop voting for these parasitic maggots.